to Sky's the Limit. I'm your host, Sharmeen Ali. This week, we are going to introduce you to a very special personality who brings a wealth of knowledge from all over the world for us right here and our viewers of this program. We've got for you today Mr. Charles Barker. He's a hotelier who's lived and worked in 10 different countries. He's also written 4 novels, and he's also a huge, passionate marine conservationist, and we're going to talk to him about that part of his work because it's very, very important in this day and age where the threats to the marine ecosystems all over the world. We'll also get his insights about what his knowledge can apply to Pakistan and how we can utilize all his wealth of experience in all the industries, particularly tourism, where he's worked in, has a lot of knowledge and information and experience in, and also about conservation and how our environment can be better protected. So let's say hello to our guest today, Mr. Charles Barker. Thank you so much for being on our program. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much for asking me.
Right, so let me begin. First, I would like our viewers to know, how does someone become such a worldly personality? Was that something in your family where you were growing up? What did your family do? Did you travel a lot?
We traveled for holidays, but not a lot. I think it was a sort of travel bug that got me at a fairly early age, and I just liked exploring cultures and different countries and regions for myself.
But you were from England. You grew up
yes.
there in the south of England.
Correct.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I was. We lived in Brighton, and I think my parents didn't like me very much because shortly after I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was sent away to boarding school, and that was until I was about 18. So
right.
I spent a lot of time away from home, and I suppose through that became independent to a large extent.
That was a kind of formative part of your life, boarding school.
Yes.
And is that where you developed this passion for wanting to see the world and do things?
Yes, I didn't do very well at academics. If I didn't really like a subject, I didn't bother with it. But what I really did like was drama and acting. And I had in mind a career on the stage and in films. And so I did a lot of acting and spent a lot of time doing that. And I was actually going to go into it formally.
Okay.
And after one play that I was in, a guy came up, a big cigar, and he was an American, and he said, "You're just the guy I want for the lead role in my next movie."
Wow.
Now, I was 16 years old, so, you know, my head, wow, here I come, Hollywood, you know. And my parents weren't quite so enthusiastic about this.
Right.
I still had A-levels to take and so on. And they got a friend to talk to me. And children being counter-suggestive to what their parents say, get somebody else to do the work. And she said, you know, have you seen any of the work that this man produces? And I said, no, but look out for it. Now, there was no videos or DVDs or internet, so there was nothing to look up. But by chance, I was out with a friend one day in Brighton, and we saw in a movie house a film, and the producer's name was this chap. And we said, oh, let's go and see it. And we should have been alerted by the fact it had an X rating. And as it turned out, the content of the film was totally inappropriate for a career in the movie industry.
So that idea just finished right.
So that idea sort of rather put paid to a career in the bright lights.
Okay.
But at about that time, I was also interested in food and the sort of edges of the hospitality industry. And so it was something that evolved from there.
Right, so you're basically a person who didn't really do what you didn't want to do, but whatever you have done, it's been with passion.
With passion and a lot of effort,
yes. A lot of effort, because it shows in all the work that you've done. There's so much of it. So let's begin with your work, your whole, it's a huge expanse of years in the hotel industry, in the hospitality industry. Tell us about those experiences. You've been in 10 different countries.
Correct.
Can you tell us a bit about what exactly over there was your role from the beginning?
Yeah. How long have we got?
We have enough time.
The first move overseas was actually to the United States on an exchange arrangement with Cornell University students in a hospitality management course. And I went to do 3 months in West Virginia at the Greenbrier Hotel, which was a magnificent place, beautiful country. And it gave me a lot of wild ideas about how fantastic this hospitality industry can be.
And how did you feel when you went from England to Cornell, an Englishman in New York? How was that experience the first time you go there?
There wasn't much time in New York. It was in West Virginia. I went through New York, but no, it was great. I mean, I thought it was fantastic and had a lovely time. And eye-opening too. It was, up until that point, I'd never understood anything at all about racism. And in West Virginia in the 1970s, the black and white divide was total.
Okay.
And it didn't seem to me to be something that was even contentious. Nobody seemed to be getting steamed up about it. It was just the norm.
Right, and it didn't exist that way in England, or did it at that time?
Not in my experience.
Okay.
As I say, this was the first time my eyes were open to it. You know, racism has been practiced since time immemorial everywhere, but this was my first awakening to it, and it was quite. That was quite a shock, and it had never been something that came across my vision before.
Okay, so that was the first experience you had over there, and then from there, where
So then I was back in the UK, and I trained after hotel school in a fairly traditional way with the Savoy Group, and learnt cooking, although my wife would disagree with that. But she's a great chef.
right.
But we'll come back to that later, perhaps. But so I learned the basics of hospitality in London, and then I joined Intercontinental Hotels, and that was a big international chain group. And from there, I then spent 13 years with Intercontinental in various places. I worked in the Caribbean. And that was great. I learned to scuba dive, and that was where I first developed a passion for the oceans. And then back in the UK, and then my first general manager position, which took me overseas, was to Oman.
Okay.
Now, Oman is a really special country. Lovely, hospitable people, beautiful countryside, lovely ocean, and so I was there just before, during and after the first Gulf War.
Right.
So it was an interesting time, met lots of interesting people, diplomatic side, in the military side, in business side.
What was your impression? You were saying it's an interesting place. In what sense? Was it that it was your first Muslim country where you were living, coming from the West, or what else stood out to you?
Yes, I don't think it was that so much, because working with Intercontinental Hotels in London was a very multinational
right.
group. The guests were very multinational. The staff were a big mix. So we were. I mean, I felt an international person. I didn't see that I was going to some strange place with strange people that I'd never come across before. In fact, my best friend at the time from school days was an Omani, and we are still in close touch. So I didn't feel I was going to any strange place.
Right.
And I felt I bedded in very quickly, and so on. I think when you go to different countries and different places, the important thing to do is to have a positive attitude.
Okay.
Look for the good in a place. And sometimes, you know, that's harder to do than others. But if you have a positive outlook and a natural desire to engage with the community and the culture and environment that you're in, you will have a very positive experience,
Right.
and you will be able to impart positive experiences to the people that you're working with.
Right, and you meet good people everywhere, actually. Like you're saying, if you keep an open mind, you actually end up meeting some great people.
Yeah.
What about the cuisine? What did you take away from these places? Did you incorporate that into your later work at all? Because there's such a big diversity of cultures and traditions you must have come across.
Yes, I mean, some nations perhaps have greater emphasis on its cuisine than others. Southeast Asia, some of the hotels, jobs I've worked at in Hong Kong, in Thailand, the cuisine is very diverse and fascinating.
Did you ever go to the next place and be like, we should have some, you know?
Well, yes, you see, I think
Far Eastern
with international hotels, you tend to have or you need to have a wide range of dishes and menus and styles of restaurant. To provide interest and attraction for guests. Your guests are coming from all over the world, so you need to be able to engage with them.
Absolutely.
So, yes, with every step you take, you add knowledge and experience which you take with you, and it accumulates onto the next stage.
And the culture of all these different countries, what stood out to you the most? Where would you say had the biggest impact on you?
I certainly think Oman was one of the most impactful places, partly because it was my first general manager position running my own hotel.
Right.
But also the country itself was so engaging and welcoming and hospitable. It was a very important time regionally because of the war.
Right.
And so it was a very interesting time. Then from there I went to Jordan, which was similarly fascinating, but it was the other side of the spectrum in a way, because Jordan's main trading partner was Iraq, but it had, for a number of reasons, sided with the West. So the post-Gulf War was almost more complicated and challenging than the actual event itself.
Right. And how did the Gulf War impact the work that you were doing at that time?
Well, because the sort of customers that were staying with us, there was, as I said, a lot of diplomatic activity, a lot of military activity, and if you're running the #1 hotel in town, then they all come and stay with you.
Did you at any time feel that, you know, it was getting dangerous or anything like that?
I don't think so, really. I mean, one was conscious of security issues, let's say that, and some of the visitors would have quite large gangs of protection with them, particularly in Jordan after the war.
Right.
But yeah, it was. I mean, I had my children who were little there with me, and in Oman, I think it was, you know, very safe. It was very easy and relaxed. Yeah, so I never felt worried or threatened.
Right, okay. And then from there, from Jordan, where did you end up then?
Well, a number of other places. I've worked in Russia. I had 2 very interesting years in Russia in the early days of perestroika, and that was quite interesting. Very Wild West in a way. It was
right.
A lot going on.
Right. This was which year?
That was mid-90s.
Mid-90s, okay, right.
I then, about that time, also worked in Pakistan for the first time. And I worked in Karachi at Avari Tars as general manager.
Okay.
And that I enjoyed. It was my first taste of this part of the world, and but it was great fun. And I subsequently came back and worked in Pakistan again in 1999 as the pre-opening project manager for the Serena Hotel.
Okay,
so,
right.
When I came here, it was just a field, a flat field, and we started digging, and so that was
right. So right at the beginning of that project,
right? At the beginning,
right.
Yes. Yeah. And so that was interesting.
And then you met this beautiful Pakistani lady, and you ended up settling with the Pakistani.
That's correct. Yes, I married Shanaz.
Right.
And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, I think.
Right, wonderful. And you said she's a great cook. So can you
Absolutely.
also, can you make Pakistani food as well?
I'm invited to stay out of the kitchen. It's a defense mechanism apart from anything else.
Right.
But no, she in Hong Kong set up a business, Coriander Connections, which was promoting and teaching Asian cuisine, Pakistani, Afghani, Kashmiri, Indian cuisine,
Wow.
and teaching it and the merits of the dishes and the health benefits of the spices and herbs. So she has done a very good business with that. And back in Pakistan, we're looking at it inversely now, teaching Southeast Asian cuisine here. So.
Right. And what about, okay, you're the one in the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
So, okay, you don't know how to make Pakistani food. How about Omani or Russian or anywhere else you've lived?
I think kitchens are best served without me.
Okay, that's interesting. Right, okay. So somewhere during that process, you also ended up, during your hotel management career, you've also ended up writing a novel.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your novels. You've written 4 of them.
Yes. So I've always enjoyed writing. Even at school, when I was primary school, I wrote a little sort of school magazine and have enjoyed writing and expressing myself in printed form. I was skiing in Switzerland on a family holiday in it was just after the Gulf War. And day 1 of a 2-week holiday, I broke a rib. And so I was stuck with nothing to do except be grumpy because the family was out enjoying themselves on the slopes and I was stuck in a cafe,
right,
taking it easy. So I thought, what am I going to do? I know, I'll write a book. So with the experiences of Oman fresh in mind, and I just moved to Jordan and I started writing a book about adventures from that time.
Which one was that? The
So that was the Brown Envelope
Club. Okay.
And then I tried looking for somebody to publish it when I finished it, and nobody was very interested.
It's very difficult to get your first novel published.
So I just, I'd written a book, I'd got that out of my system, I packed it away in a drawer and forgot about it. And then in Hong Kong, I was telling somebody the story, and they said, oh, you should get it printed, and took me through the process of self-publishing. So I printed it in Hong Kong, I had the launch, and so that was good fun. And
right.
I was then encouraged by doing that and getting it actually into printed format. So I then, about a year or so later, started on another novel, which was the Iraqi Deception.
What is that? Can you tell us a bit about
that? That was really relating to the Second Iraq War.
Okay.
And the weapons of mass destruction that were in Iraq leading up to the war. Now the Allies say there weren't any weapons of mass destruction. My story intimates that there were, where they came from, but then what happened to them and why they weren't found, where they are now.
So it's kind of a counter-narrative to what everyone said, right?
Who's doing what with them. And so it's a chase around the planet to get hold of these weapons. And
really? So, yes, you were telling me about the Iraqi Deception.
So that's the story. A lot of it is based on fact. Both books, in fact, all my books are based on as much fact as possible. The narrative itself then becomes the fiction.
Right, that's very interesting because after the Second Iraq War, the whole world was up in flames that it was all based on wrong intelligence and blaming President Bush. So this is a counter-narrative to that.
It is. You know, Saddam Hussein used chemical and biological weapons. It's a matter of record. It's not in any dispute. Such weapons were found and destroyed in Iraq in the lead up to the Gulf War.
Right.
So it is perfectly possible that they just weren't found. Now, in my story, I'm not going to go into too much more detail, they were there, but they were then taken away at the last minute. So that covers the Bush-Blair scenario. They weren't actually there at the time that they invaded. But
Okay.
he had a willingness and an ability to stockpile and use chemical and biological weapons.
Right.
And that is a fact.
Okay.
And, so
And you did all your research while you
Absolutely,
were in
yeah.
the Middle East and all
Yeah.
on this. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess the viewers will have to read the
I
book.
even talked with Tariq Aziz, which was about as close as I could get to Saddam to talk about the
Wow,
thing. So
okay.
I researched extensively and went into a lot of detail.
Right. So it just shows that there's different sides to every story.
Absolutely.
Right. And then I guess our viewers are just going to have to read the book to get more
Absolutely,
information
yes,
about
definitely.
all of this.
Yeah.
So what about this? I'm going to come to your conservation book class
Yeah.
because we're going to get into that. But the Sapphire Stratagem, what is that about?
Well, that's not published yet, actually. That's hopefully will be next month. Sapphire Stratagem is about illegal sapphire mining and regime change in Madagascar, and human exploitation, and a number of criminal organizations trying to exploit the wealth that is in Madagascar.
Were you in Madagascar when you
No,
wrote
I
this
wasn't.
book? Okay, right.
But, a lot of research.
A lot of research over there, right? That's again a very controversial yet interesting subject, which not many people know about.
No.
You know, and
Well, you know,
it's
there's
taking
been,
on a
there's
lot
been
of people.
popularized in films the blood diamonds,
Yes, exactly.
and trafficking of gems around the world from poor countries. So there's you know, there's a bit of a track record of that sort of thing happening, but not to my knowledge in Madagascar,
No.
where the largest sapphires in the world ever have been found. It's not, you know, sapphires are found in other places, but Kashmir, I think, for example, but it's, you know, it's...
And where there's trafficking, then there's a lot of human exploitation as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that probably is
forced
one-
labour to do the mining, and
Right.
this is, you know, organised crime.
Right, okay. So it's like a whole syndicate and you get into that. All
Yes.
right, so that's very interesting as well. I'm trying to extract more information from you, but again, it's going to come out soon, so then we'll have to wait and read this novel of yours. But the fourth book now, to me, which is extremely interesting, is The Marine Betrayal. It's about
Maritime Betrayal.
Sorry,
yeah.
Maritime Betrayal. This is part of your conservation work.
Right.
So tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so I became interested in marine conservation way back in Oman. And I was a keen scuba diver, and I, even as a child, had listened to the adventures of Jacques Cousteau, who was a French explorer, an oceanographer, and used to provide documentaries on TV, black and white back then, so you didn't see all the lovely colours of the undersea world. But I was very interested in it. And in Oman, as a scuba diver, there was a lot of mess and debris and junk on the coral reefs outside Muscat. And I organised quite a large team of recreational divers and military divers, Navy divers, to clean up the coral reefs. And we, over a period of time, took off all the rotten fishing nets and junk and debris.
How long did that take you?
We did it over a number of months, but it was, we lifted tons, literally, of refuse and debris. And the government were very keen that we'd done this, and were very pleased with the effort, and in turn took on environmentalism and sustainability and approach to that whole subject,
and
which
not
they
just
champion to this day.
And not just limited to writing papers, but actually doing the work on the ground, which you don't see enough of the time, I would say,
Exactly.
in this line of work.
Exactly. So we, so that was my first sort of active engagement, if you like. And then over the years in different countries, I lived and worked in Nigeria, in Thailand, Hong Kong, and other such places, and always I tried to get involved in some form of environmental work, both in terms of teaching and explaining to local population, whether it was just my staff or a wider community in school, the whole issue of waste management. You know, the concept often is just chuck it, dump it, throw it away. And so every little bit that one can do, I think, helps.
Right.
But my main next big thing was in Hong Kong. And there I discovered an abomination, shark's fin soup. And the cost of shark fin soup at the moment is running at over 100 million sharks a year being killed for their fins. And it's an unsustainable catastrophe. Sharks are becoming extinct.
Because naturally you're not going to have shark farms where you can, where it's sustainable, but they're all caught in the wild.
Sharks take a long time to mature. Shark reaches maturity around 10 years to 14 years. Their gestation period and their reproduction period is several more years. And then they'll only have one shark at a time. So they can't keep up with this exploitation. And much of the, most of the fins are just hacked off the animal and they're thrown back into the sea alive. And these fins are then packaged up and sent through Hong Kong and largely processed there, but also in the Chinese mainland. And this is largely organised by organised crime. And all around the world, and it's even in England, fins are taken and sent through to Hong Kong. Not so much, but in the Pacific and the Chinese waters and warmer waters where there are more sharks, this is happening all the time. 100 million sharks a year, you know?
And I don't think everybody's really aware that the fins are cut off and they're put back in the water alive. That's extreme cruelty as well.
It is, but you know, the thing is that shark's fin doesn't really taste of anything. It's the same material as hair. A chicken broth is made and this fin is dunked in it because traditionally it was a dish that only the elite of society in China would enjoy. With the growth and prosperity of China, more and more people are able to aspire to this dish. So at every wedding, at every feast and every banquet, anybody who can will order shark's fin soup as a mark of a badge of honour of prosperity, not because of its intrinsic delight to eat.
Right, okay.
And sharks are suffering and it's terrible.
Right.
So I championed a program back in 2010, 2011 with a local NGO to get hotels to stop serving shark fin soup on their menus and their banquet menus, and restaurants and private clubs. And we enjoyed a measure of success, but it was relatively short-lived, and then it started slackening off again. More recently, I've met up with the Hong Kong Shark Foundation, of which I'm now advisory board director. And the person running that, Andrea Ritchie, is doing a fantastic job getting the word out and the message out to the community at large. If you take the demand away for shark's fin soup, then we'll have solved the problem. So rather than just telling hotels to take it off menus, get people to understand not to buy it and not want to buy it.
Exactly.
So educate at children's levels, at school levels. Use companies and corporations to spread the message.
And is that what the book's name is about, Maritime Deception?
The work on the marine conservation in Hong Kong then is very much geared towards get rid of the demand, and then the trade in shark fin soup will
Okay.
diminish.
Mm-hmm.
The book, though, goes a bit further than that, because it's not just sharks that are suffering. Whales are being slaughtered.
Yeah.
Dolphins are being slaughtered. At this very moment in Japan, for 5 months every year, there is a cull of dolphins, which takes place centered around Taiji in Japan. And hundreds of dolphins are slaughtered and killed for their meat. Some are captured for entertainment parks. And the seas literally run red with the blood of these creatures. In the Faroe Islands, pilot whales, North Atlantic dolphins are annually pulled into a cull. In July this year, 800 were killed in one day in this massive butchery exercise. And this sort of behavior, these so-called traditions, you know, humans should be better than this.
Absolutely.
These are our fellow creatures, these are intelligent animals, and we're treating them this way. And they are slowly but surely becoming extinct.
Right.
And
Which marine creatures are the most at the highest risk of extinction at the moment? Is it the sharks or dolphins or some particular?
Sharks, certainly, but in Pakistan, for example, there is an indigenous dolphin to Pakistan, and it lives in the rivers.
The blind dolphin.
The blind dolphin, the Indus, it's called originally the South Asian dolphin, which is found now in the Indus and in the Ganges. And it is now isolated and disappearing because it's been locked in by dams higher upriver, so it can't move around, so its gene pool is diminishing, and there's only about 1,500 left. And they are blind, they can absorb a little light, but they have a very advanced sonar system for getting food and finding their way around in muddy waters. But, you know, here's a creature, they're also fished, but it's a relatively small industry because there's not that many of them around now. But it's so sad that, you know, 1,500 dolphins only left of a complete species.
Is there any potential to reverse that? Is there anything that we can do as, you know, at a government level to improve that situation?
It would need to be at a government level, and it would need huge resourcing and planning, because as much as anything else, they need to be relocated to bigger stretches of water where they can thrive and develop and not be fished and hunted. And I suspect that the effort and the resources needed probably not there to assist.
Right.
I don't know, but it's a sad state of affairs.
Okay, so that needs to be addressed.
To your question about what is most endangered, so there's 520 species of sharks, but many, 50% of them are approaching endangered and critical situation.
And they're all part of this ecosystem. I mean, whether people like sharks or they don't, because there's a very negative perception about sharks from movies like Jaws, etc. They think they're going to attack humans and
very, very sad.
Yeah.
I've dived with sharks, and it was one of the most exotic, extraordinary experiences of my life. And they came right up close to my face and then just moved away. Rub your hand down the side, and it's like
without any
sandpaper.
protection,
No,
just
no
out in the
protection.
open. Okay.
And if you respect their element, it's their world, they're the masters of it. Immerse yourself in there. It's like going to another country. Immerse yourself in the environment and the culture of theirs. Respect their rules, and you can have a wonderful time.
And also they're part of a whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
If sharks go extinct, then there are other species which depend on them, etc., or they interact with that also are
and other
harmed.
species get out of control. So it's the whole ecosystem in the oceans is under such threat. And it's not just the big creatures, it's, you know, overfishing is just devastating stocks around the world. And sooner or later the oceans will be devoid of fish, and people won't be able to have any fish to eat. And you know, the dependency on the oceans by humans is massive. And
Right.
if we're going to kill everything that's out there,
Okay.
you know, last year, animal trafficking was valued, illegal animal trafficking by organised crime was valued at $250 billion. And with that sort of amount of money at stake, nation states and policing enforcement agencies have a huge job to try and do anything about it. So whether it's African elephants being poached for their ivory, or sharks for their fins, or whales being slaughtered for so-called research, these things are very difficult to do something about with limited resources and that sort of money.
Okay, so more funding is needed for it. We're going to discuss your marine conservation work and also its application in Pakistan, some of your ideas. I'd like to hear about the problems that Pakistan faces, but we're going to take a short break and then we'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. We're at the home of Mr. Charles Barker, who has been very generous along with his family in showing us around his home, and now we're present in his study. He's a keen novelist, so I'm sure that he's also a very keen reader as well, and we're also talking about his work as a hotelier as well as a marine conservationist, which are all three distinctly different industries and areas to work in, which makes him all the more interesting for us. Charles, you were telling us about now the marine conservation work, and we talked about Pakistan a bit. We talked about the endangered species all over the world. The blind dolphin, which of course, you know, it was very disturbing to hear its state in Pakistan. Now, the cleanup that you did in Oman, in the coastline over there, we have a very similar problem here in Pakistan, in our coastline. There's a lot of garbage. We see that on the Karachi coast washing up, and naturally that threatens the ecosystem and a host of other things. So what do you recommend for that to be done? Other than a cleanup, how do you prevent this from carrying on?
The issue is you can't, what we did in Muscat, where we just went and cleaned the reef
Right.
as a one-off activity, that isn't the sort of fix that one can introduce here.
We don't just give you a scuba suit and you're going to do it for us, like you did in Muscat.
There has to be a cultural shift about waste management.
Right.
And not just in Pakistan, globally. Waste is generated by overproduction, overpurchasing, gluttony, greed, use of inappropriate products, and then the actual management of that waste and disposal of that waste is very, very badly handled in most parts of the world.
The plastic ban that Islamabad has, for instance, is that a good start for the rest of the country for this purpose?
I don't think so, because it's no good saying have a ban on something without providing an alternative, because frankly, if you go into a shop to get a bunch of apples, you know, you're going to have to carry it in something. So if you're not having it in a plastic bag, what are you going to carry it in? So there has to be, you know, practical and sensible and cost-effective alternatives.
And you have to have a shift in habits as well.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to educate a new mindset about not messing up your environment. Let's go back a little bit. For Pakistan, one of the big potential opportunities for Pakistan is tourism. And I think everybody one talks to knows that to some extent or another. Now, managing waste, having a strategic plan for developing tourism is absolutely critical, because if one doesn't plan for waste management and environmental issues, one is going to have a bigger mess. If you go into the countryside up near Murray, for example, after a holiday weekend, the countryside looks a wreck. There's rubbish everywhere, and it's a mess.
And there's garbage thrown down the mountainside.
Yes, the local community get very little benefit financially. And what you have are, essentially, you are being a busy fool encouraging tourism, because it's not being managed, it's not being handled properly, and you're just wearing out the infrastructure.
So you're talking about proper planning.
So you have to go back to a planning stage, which involves procurement. You know, the things that food is shipped in and transported in. There's so much plastic and disposable containers. You need to start back at that level and manage how you purchase, what you purchase, how you deliver it, how you then look after people, have set standards for the hotels, for restaurants, toilets, the things that aren't that exciting to talk about but are so fundamentally important to the development of organised tourism, signage, for example. So a part of that process of development is looking at how you handle your waste products and so on.
Right. Can I ask you one thing from your experience? Do people actually change their habits without having some kind of repercussion from the law? If suppose they litter, etc., have you seen that happen just from educating people, or does there have to be? Does it have to be enforced?
There needs to be enforcement, certainly. For example, the building development has been fairly hit and miss in the northern areas. People want to have a hotel, so they build something.
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing should not happen and needs to be control mechanisms.
Okay.
And with that, then you can develop a much better quality industry. Education is a part of it, but it's much broader than just how to handle the things I've discussed. There needs to be a mindset change to the youngsters coming up through an education system, recognizing hospitality as a worthy profession.
Right.
Whether it be in the kitchen, whether it be service, whether it be management.
So that they get trained for it and not just end up in the industry.
Have proper schooling for it. Whether we like it or not, English is the most internationally spoken language of tourism, airlines and so on.
So that needs to be taught.
So one needs to have education for language. One needs to have a mindset change of integrity. The culture of, I'm sorry to say it, but corruption as a norm.
So we're coming back to the marine conservation work that we were talking about, because it's very important, conservation as a whole, and for the entire world we're seeing so many problems. However, now we're talking about Pakistan's tourism industry. What I'd like to ask you also is, we talked about the Karachi cleanup, we know that there's a deforestation problem in the north and everything. You're saying local communities don't benefit with the tourism. So how can you involve local communities in the process of conservation?
There needs to be a local pride in one's environment. So, you know, you have beautiful mountainside and scenery and so on. Take a pride in that and enjoy some of the rewards of travellers visiting. Engage people with, rather lifeless looking hotels being developed. Get guest houses, the concept of people welcoming people into their homes to stay. Pakistanis are so hospitable and warm and friendly, and they, you know, it would be such a good natural fit.
Would you say Airbnbs would work?
That sort of idea.
Yeah, sort of like bed and breakfast and things like that, right?
And travellers would enjoy that too. So I think there's tons of opportunity. And with that, you know, the local communities actually start reaping some of the reward.
Absolutely, individuals and not just owners of hotels.
And local guides and so on.
Right.
I think down in the south, in the coastal strip, again, the ocean beside Pakistan is beautiful. It's lovely. But on the beaches and where waste is flowing into the sea, it's messy.
Unfortunately, yeah.
You know, one needs to address the problem at the source, at the heart of the matter.
Absolutely, right. So we're talking right now about people, communities. You've also done a lot of work to improve relations between different communities and cultures and religions and all. Your Better Together Foundation, which you're a part of, does a lot of work to that effect. Tell us about that, because in today's atmosphere of intolerance at every level that we're seeing all over the world, this is really important.
Sure. Better Together Foundation was established by my sister-in-law, Rosina, in Mombasa, in Kenya. And its aim is to bring together disparate social groups, different religious communities, and bring them together to forge greater understanding of each other and to greater tolerance of each other, and recognize the differences and embrace those differences. And the benefit is to then, with greater understanding, serve the community better as a whole. So, for example, if you get together on a cultural event with a vast variety of different groups, you raise money and you then go into the community and you have medical camps in the villages, you have feeding programs for the destitute, you have educational support programs, and everything is geared to helping those in need. And you arrive at that point by bringing together people working in harmony and understanding each other. And Shanaz and myself went over, we were there for a couple of months at the beginning of the year, and there's serious poverty in the streets. People, hundreds and hundreds of people sleeping rough on the streets, and being able to go and feed them and give them a bit of hope and a bit of cheer was very gratifying.
Absolutely.
And I did this in Hong Kong as well, a feeding program with a company called Food Link, which was an NGO that started up. And all over the world you have this in cities that you don't think of as being poor. London has hundreds of homeless people on the streets, and food banks are more and more important. Here we are, Better Together Foundation is also doing some work on feeding programs.
Okay, in Pakistan?
Yeah, and support. But low profile, but it's necessary everywhere.
It is, absolutely, because like we were talking about earlier, that there is an atmosphere of intolerance right now. You see it everywhere. You see it in Pakistan, you see it in the West, you see it in Europe, you see it in America, and these kind of initiatives would really help to sort of temper that, and people really understand each other that way. How can we build on this further in Pakistan? What would you recommend to individuals or organizations to improve on this here?
I think it's small steps. At a national level, Pakistan is very wealthy in some respects, depends how you look at it. Its agricultural potential is huge. Its skill sets are fantastic, whether it's making fine medical instruments or whether it's making fine clothing, which is exported. Minerals, precious stones. There's so much potential here. And pulling that together and making sure that the money stays where it's intended and is used to benefit the community, to benefit the country, then one can introduce far more in terms of social welfare.
Okay, so at the corporation level, benefit your communities as well as you go along with your work.
But you know, that's a big story. That's a big fix, like so many other things. And so in the way that we're doing it here is looking to identify particular groups of people or individuals even in need, whether it be with educating a family of some family's children or providing support for them, whether it's providing food in hampers, whether it's providing some transport to get to school, whatever. There are so many things that one can do. And I know that a lot of people in Pakistan on an individual basis do that.
So, Mr. Barker, we're coming now to the end of our conversation with you, which has been very interesting and very enlightening for our viewers. What would you like to give as a message to the viewers in Pakistan and about all these issues we've talked about?
I would love to have an opportunity to engage with the governmental development of tourism and hospitality in Pakistan. I think there is so much opportunity and so much potential talent and it's an area that I could definitely add value to. So I would hope I could make an impact and help out there.
Right, so we say inshallah. Hopefully
Inshallah.
we will see, with all your wealth of experience, we hope to see you very much involved in improving, helping us improve in all these efforts. So thank you so much, Mr. Barker, for being on our program today. We really heard some very interesting stories from you, and also there's so much to learn from someone with so much experience in the whole world, basically, in so many different fields. So thank you again for giving us your time and inviting us to your lovely home.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Right, so that brings us to the end of our program today, and we've met Mr. Charles Barker on today's program, and as you've seen, he's a very, very highly experienced hotelier. He's got years and years of experience in that, living in 10 different countries, a novelist, and also he's made a lot of efforts towards conservation of many marine species, and also overall a fervent environmentalist. So we hope to see him very much involved in Pakistan going forward as well. Thank you so much for joining us on our program today. That's all for now. We'll see you next week, same program, same place, and same time. Bye-bye for now.